Cashflow Diary podcast, episode 499.
Welcome to yet another exciting episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast, the podcast that teaches you insider tips, tactics, and strategies for creating leverage streams of cash flow into your life. Learn from top-performing entrepreneurs, business owners, investors, and thought leaders from across the globe as they share their secrets to success. Like what you learn on this and other Cashflow Diary podcast episodes? Go to learninvestingnow.com and sign up to receive powerful tips and information that will help you succeed as an entrepreneur and investor. Now, here's your host, investor, entrepreneur, business owner, educator, speaker, author, and master facilitator of Robert Kiyosaki's cash flow game, Jay Massey.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another episode of the Cashflow Diary podcast. I'm your host, Jay Massey, and I'm glad that you are here today because here's the thing. When it comes to building a business and you going out there to grow your cash flow, one of those necessary components that you are looking for is, well, funding, money. And I also know something that's also true, especially for those of you who are of the real estate persuasion. You go out there and you're looking at marketplaces and you're going, man, there's not enough people here, or it's only 100,000 people or 300,000 people, or man, I'd like to be able to do more real estate, but then I feel like I have to go to the big city. And then for those of you in the big city, you're always saying, you know what? It's too doggone expensive over here. I can't, but this is the only place I can make any money. You can't make any money in a small town, and all these other things come across your table. Here's the deal. What if I told you that it was possible not only to do well, but to do extremely well in what many would consider a reasonably small city? And you could build a seven-figure business, and you could automate it, and you could do so just in single-family houses alone. In fact, today's guest has done exactly those things. I am, of course, speaking of Jay Conner, and many of you may already know him from his YouTube and or podcast channel, or maybe you've been to one of his events. At the end of the day, if you've ever heard of the guy called the Private Money Authority, then you know exactly who I'm talking about. Here's what it comes down to, though. You and I need to expand our tool set. Expanding that tool set always makes us more valuable to the marketplace, and I think that's exactly what's going to happen for us today. So make sure that you are ready to take some notes, ready to listen, ready to learn, and most importantly, ready to love Jay Conner. Jay, how you doing?
Hello, Jay. Thank you so much for, an awesome introduction. I'm doing fantastic. Beautiful here in Eastern North Carolina today, here in Morehead City. And wow, I am so excited and thankful to be here on your show. Thank you for having me.
I am glad to that you're here too. And a lot of people know that I too am from North Carolina. But I honestly, to tell you the truth, Jay, I couldn't take the weather. I needed something different.
I hear you, man. Mylands, you're out there in Mylands. You're living in California. It's like beautiful every day, right?
Right. It's so consistent, and that's exactly how I like it. I know I have a reasonable assurance. I don't even bother with umbrellas or even looking at the weather pattern because I think I know what it's going to look like each and every day. Anyway,
love it.
With that being said, this is your first time here. So what we need to do is I need to ask you the same question I tend to ask everybody the first time that they're here. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
All right. I tend to look at today's entrepreneurs a lot like yesterday's superheroes. You know, Batman, Robin, Superman, Wonder Woman, etc. Right. Because I think superheroes and entrepreneurs have a ton of things in common. For example, there are times as an entrepreneur, I can envision myself running around town using our products and services, saving our customers one sale at a time. And yes, I'm probably wearing a cape at that moment. Now, at the same time, though, just like a superhero, an entrepreneur has a beginning. So my question to you is as follows. Before you being a real estate developer, national speaker, private lending expert, before you being able to do, your rehabs of over 400 houses, and you've been doing this for 15 years, before all of that people know you for today, what we want to know is, who is Jay Conner?
Well, I sort of backed into it. I didn't grow up thinking that I wanted to be a real estate investor and et cetera, but I was raised in the housing business. My father, Wallace Connor, at one time back in the 80s, he was the president and CEO of the largest manufactured housing retailer in the nation. And unfortunately, the consumer financing was pulled from that industry. So I knew for about a year that the company was shutting down, and I was no longer going to be in the corporate world as I was with that company. And so my wife, Carol Joy, and I, we've just got great friends in New Bern, North Carolina. I know you know where that is. And their names are Craig and Kim. And this was back in 1993 when I was still in the mobile home industry. They wanted to build their house, but they didn't have any seed money for down payment, et cetera. And Kim's father lived down in Florida, and he was a full-time real estate investor for many, many years in single-family houses. He said, I tell you what, I'll come up to New Bern and I will find a fixer-upper. I'll buy it. You all can do the sweat equity and fix it up on the evenings and weekends, and we'll sell it. And you can keep the profit for your down payment on your house. And they pocketed on that deal about $25,000 in less than 60 days. And I was still trying to make $3,000 on a single wide trailer mobile home. And you being from North Carolina, I know you've seen some mobile homes and trailers in your day from food.
More than one.
And so that stuck in my head, Jay. I said, if I ever get out of the mobile home business, I want to be an investor, a real estate investor in single family houses, and just be a flipper. So the corporate job went away. And so I had the opportunity to start doing this 15 years ago.
Got it. Totally makes sense. And I find it interesting because you said something at the beginning that I believe to be very true for a number of people, and I know it's true for myself, is you said you backed into it. You didn't wake up one day and say, you know what, I'm going to become a real estate investor. It wasn't the goal from the beginning. So with that being said, I have a question, because I know this is true for myself. I often tell people that I don't necessarily like real estate. When it comes to, look at the walls and admiring construction and all that other stuff. That is so not the thing for me. I like the benefits that real estate brings, and therefore I do real estate related strategies. Are you the same, or are you actually I love this particular plaster?
Yeah, I've got the same line of thought that you do, Jay. A lot of times when I hear someone say, I just love real estate, I don't think they really understand what they're saying.
Exactly. Are you sure?
I will say this. I enjoy seeing, a lemon turned into lemonade. I enjoy seeing, a really, really ugly house and what that can turn into. But as far as the process of it, I have no interest in. One of my students, and I know you got a lot of students too. One of my students, I was speaking at an event, a few years ago, and one of the people in the audience said, Jay, I just love rehabbing my own houses. It's like therapy to me. And you know what I said to him? I said, man, anybody that rehabs their own houses needs therapy.
Totally.
But no, I'm just like you, Jay. What excites me about real estate is there's not many strategies or vehicles, if you will, out there that I know of that can give a person the kind of wealth and freedom and return on their time like real estate does. One thing that I didn't get straight in my head until a few years ago was the really understanding the value of time. And, I finally understood a few years ago, and this was as I was really getting into real estate investing, that it doesn't matter what you do, as long as someone is trading dollars for hours. I don't care if you're an attorney that can demand $400, $500 an hour, or whatever. As long as you're trading dollars for hours, you will always be limited as to the return and the money that you can make. I mean, my average profits on single family houses now in my small market is $64,000. What's my average time involved in that deal? I don't know, probably less than 3 hours, because all I do is make decisions. I look at a piece of paper on several lead sheets coming in, and, when we've got an amazing team that, talks to buyers and talks to sellers and, coordinates with the contractors on getting the job done, then my involvement is, very, very limited period of time.
Okay, so let's go down this rabbit hole, because I know there's a number of people listening, especially those that are on the newer end of life, inside their building cash flow, etc., that they've heard that before. They've heard, okay, Jay, you can, you have all this access to time and all these other things, but let's go back in time and let's start when it was just you. Because we want to give them an example of what does it take? Because, I mean, you and I both know, yes, building the team is key. It's important. But how do you get there?
Yeah. So I'm so glad you brought this up for me to clarify. So did I start out this way? Absolutely not. My lands. I busted my butt building a business. And yes, I mean, I've got friends, I've got students that most of them started out part-time. I started out part-time. The last year that we were shutting down that corporation, I only did 3 deals. And it was me on the cell phone making it happen, talking, hiring the contractor. It was me talking to the seller. I did some marketing for sale by owners. And it was me answering the telephone. Starting out, if anybody, for your listeners, and I know you got thousands and thousands of listeners, I would say this. If somebody tells you that starting out in real estate investing is not going to take some work and some hard work, then, I haven't found that program. Okay.
Me neither.
I haven't found that program. Now, there are some programs out there you can spend thousands of dollars on, but at the end of the day, real life, and as well or better than I do, Jay, you got to take action. You got to follow the systems. You got to follow the strategies, and you got to be committed and you got to be dedicated, my first year I just did 3 deals, and I did that on purpose because I wanted to see what were some common mistakes I might be making, and before I really, turned up the knob to where I was doing, 25 or 30, houses a year.
Totally understood. So let's talk about that for a second, because I know there's a number of individuals who are going, you know what, I would totally do real estate, Jay. I would, except how do I know I'm picking the right one? What happens when I make a mistake? It's going to cost a lot of money. How do I deal with all of those things? And it's a bunch of what if questions that are keeping them on the sidelines. How did you deal with that?
Yeah. So in answer to that question, the best advice I can give is, particularly for someone that's new, never done a deal before, don't go about this business by yourself. Get a mentor, get a coach. And of course, Jay Massey himself, one of the best on the planet. Get a coach, get someone to hold your hand and work with that's been through the minefield, that has, made the mistakes. Why do I want to make mistakes when I can learn from somebody else's, right? Don't start out the business, and don't do what I did. Okay. Don't do what I did.
There you go.
I started out my first year, and I was doing it now I had some good experience in the manufactured housing business, but it wasn't rehabbing, and it wasn't, doing single family houses. So I had some good business sense. But as far as the business itself goes, of being a real estate investor, I didn't get a mentor and coach until after I'd been in the business for a year. And, until I got my mentor and coach, I never even heard of these creative ways of funding deals, such as buying subject to the existing note. I'll tell you how green I was, Jay. My first deal that I had, my first house that I'd gotten rehabbed and ready to go. And by the way, back then, 15 years ago, I mean, I had an unsecured line of credit, okay, of $250,000 starting out.
Wow.
And I bought this house for $50,000. I put 50 in it, had 100 in it. And then what was I thinking at the time? Well, how am I going to sell this house? Oh, I'm going to list it with a realtor, right? So I listed it with a realtor friend of mine. 45 days went by, Jay, and no showings. And this was, in January, first part of February. And so I'd read in one of them books that if I put an ad in the paper that says owner financing and, easy terms, that my phone would ring off the hook. Well, man, Jay, my cell phone rang off the hook. Now, here in Carteret County, our newspaper only comes out 3 times a week. That's how small we are. Okay.
I love it.
And so the ad ran Sunday and Wednesday. I had to stop the ad. And so here's the point of my story. I talked to this fellow named Lynn Wood, met him at the house. He walks to the house, falls in love with it. I've got it all staged and pretty. He comes back around to the kitchen and he says, and this is how green I was. He says, Jay, I'll give you an $18,000 lease option deposit right now.
What?
I didn't know what a lease option deposit was.
It was how you were about to make a lot of money.
And so I remember what my dad had told me: if somebody offers you a check, take the money and figure it out.
Right.
So I took his money, and back then, he had a 580 score. We were able to get a mortgage for him and cash him out. But the point is, I was so green. I didn't know what I was doing. So yeah, in answer to that question, get a coach.
No, I like it. I like it because see, there's a lot of times we don't realize what we have and we need someone's perspective, and that's in essence that's what you're saying. I mean, you didn't understand, but you knew enough to get started, and you were confident enough to work with that. And I think all too often we wait until we understand everything because we're so afraid of doing something incorrectly that we end up doing nothing. So I guess my question to you is, when it comes down to, we'll say, outcomes that have not been what you originally intended, what have you learned from those things? And more importantly, do you find yourself more embracing what many people could call mistakes or failures now versus running from them and trying to avoid them? Hello there, entrepreneur. This is Jay Massey. I know that if you've ever gone over to the site, cashflowdiary.com, you may have asked yourself, where on earth do you get a domain name from? Especially as you are beginning to build your bigger, better, badder business, you need a web presence. You need the email address. You need a way for people to contact you electronically so that you can stop doing the @gmail.com game. Well, the good folks over at GoDaddy have definitely supplied us with every domain that we have ever used. So what I want you to do is I want you to go over to trygodaddy.com/Cashflow Diary. Again, that's trygodaddy.com/Cashflow Diary, because it's a quick way for you to get set up to capture your domain name the exact way that you want it. They got easy search functions, and most importantly for you is that you'll be up and running today. As I said, once you get started, stay started. Don't let small little obstacles of how to get your own domain name going stop you. So again, go to trygodaddy.com/Cashflow Diary, and let's get back to the rest of the story.
Oh, sure. I mean, we still make mistakes today, but they are, let's just say they're mitigated. So What I want to say, one of the biggest mistakes that I made in real estate investing when I started out was there's 3 properties. All right, and I bought all 3 of them right close together at the same time. This goes back to, well, I don't know what year it was, but I was still green. And here's what I did. There are 3 condominiums over at Atlantic Beach. All right, and I bought them. They all needed fixing up. My intention, Jay, was to flip those condos. All right. They're all, they're on the water, resort area. And so here's what happened. From the time that I bought them, got them fixed up, and then to get them put on the market, the market had already started to turn down. And here's what happened. By the time I could get them sold, I was upside down, which means I owed more than what I could sell them for. So here's the really, really important lesson that I learned about real estate investing. And that is, regardless of what your intended exit strategy is on a property, make sure you have run the numbers. And if you have to end up holding that property, make sure the rent that you can bring in on that property carries your underlying debt and carrying cost, and you've still got a positive cash flow. Big lesson. So did I explain that clear enough?
Yeah,
I want everybody to get that.
I'm laughing because that was, you just described my first transaction. I took the property over subject to, and long story short, after rehab and everything, could not get it sold. The only thing that saved me was the fact that it did cash flow from a monthly perspective. And
well, so hallelujah.
That was it. Everything else was like, okay, mess that up. But also at the same time, what you're saying is, if we realize real estate can be one of the most forgiving type of investments, because if you have it cash flow, now you've got oxygen, you can wait until it fixes itself. But that's not true for most things.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So today, when it comes down to all of the strategies that you've practiced, because I know this is true for myself, I'm curious, do you have your favorite, what I like to call creative acquisition tool out there in the marketplace? Because like you, I have never used a bank, like, ever. So, but I develop a liking for certain tools. So I'm just kind of curious, what's your favorite hammer?
Yeah. So when you say acquisition tool, are you talking about finding the deals or funding the deals?
I'm talking about, before we talk about funding the deals or finding the deals, I'm actually talking about the tool that you like to use to even get, say, an equitable interest in the deals, whether that be one of the things, for example, one of my personal favorite tools, as I mentioned earlier, but is a contract for deed. It is something that I like using from time to time when I'm just trying to ease my way in. But you also mentioned, a lease option earlier. Mm-hmm. I just didn't know if you had a particular one that you prefer.
Yeah. So besides private money, which I'm sure we'll talk about.
Oh yeah, we're getting there.
I love subject to.
Yep.
I love buying subject to the existing note, because I found most times that's going to be one of the most profitable ways, to make money on a deal. I mean, you're able to take advantage of the interest rate that, the seller had on that mortgage. And it's just a very, very, simple transaction. And of course, when you talk about buying subject to, that could be like a series of podcasts, I'm sure.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure we lost a few people, but it's okay. They'll catch up. I was just curious if again, that particular strategy is definitely something that I've used a lot myself, along with reps and whatever it takes to get the job done in the right way for everybody. So I know why I started in the real estate world. Credit score was 398. We were recovering, had a whole bunch of issues medically. My wife was unable to eat or drink. I could not walk and talk simultaneously without fainting. The idea of a bank touching us was just not going to happen anyway. So that's why we started out that way. And we just found success that way. So we never decided, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. I'm curious, how did you develop your desire to do things without banks? Where did that come from?
Well, I backed into that too.
Okay. All right.
So, Jay, I know you. I mean, you just mentioned or alluded to the difficulties and challenges that you and your wife are going through. Well, what I'm going to share right now is, and I know everybody can relate to this, something that happened in your life that as you were going through it, you looked at it as a huge difficulty. It was painful. And when you came out on the other side, you looked back behind you, and it was like this huge blessing in disguise that you had lived through, but at the time you're going through it, you didn't know. So how in the world did I get involved in private money and not having to rely on banks? Well, at first, I was relying on banks. When I say at first, I'm talking the first 6 years that I was in this business. I was using lines of credit, traditional funding, at the local banks, the local community banks. And I tell you, Jay, I remembered as though it was just like this morning. I called up my banker, and his name was Steve. The operative word there is was, right? So I called him my banker, and I had this conversation with him, and I'd had this conversation many, many, many times. And I said to him, I said, I've got 2 deals under contract. And, I want to close here in about 3 or 4 weeks. And here's the funding that's required, for the deals. And, that's normally all I would tell my banker. And Jay, I tell you, Steve went quiet on me. And which is never a good sign when your banker or your significant other goes quiet. And so he finally cleared his throat and he said, Jay, he says, I'm sorry to tell you, but the bank has collapsed your line of credit. I never heard of a line of credit being collapsed. But I knew
yeah, you're like, what does that mean?
I said, what? And so anyway, I said, what do you mean? What do you mean, Steve? He says, well, the bank is just not loaning out money to real estate investors anymore these days. And, Jay, I know you recall, and a number of your listeners will recall what was going on in 2008.
Right.
2009. And so here I am. I'm cut off. I got these 2 deals are representing over $100,000 in equity and profits. And I have no way to fund these 2 deals. So I hang up the phone and, I had a decision to make. Am I going to search for another way or am I going to quit? And I tell you, as I look back on this story and think about it, one of my phrases I coined is, it's impossible for you to fail until you decide to quit. So I call up my friend Jeff in Greensboro, and I tell Jeff what had just happened on the phone with my banker. You know what Jeff said to me? He said, welcome to the club, Jay. They just cut me off last week. And I said, well, what are you doing? And Jeff told me about this private money thing. And so here's the blessing. In less than 90 days, I was able to raise $2,150,000 in new, fresh funding for my real estate deals that didn't have anything to do with pulling my credit or checking my income or et cetera. And so I put the private money thing on steroids. That was almost 9 years ago. That conversation happened. And so we now have, my wife and I, we've got 47 private lenders. These are individuals just like you and me that are funding our deals. In my land, your listeners, you don't need 47 private lenders. I started out with 1, Right. Private money. I mean, you and I wouldn't be on your show today, Jay, unless the banks had cut me off.
Right. Right.
I didn't have a reason to look for another way and talk about freedom. I mean, that's the biggest blessing my banker could have done for me was cut me off. Right.
Yeah. And it's what's interesting to me is that oftentimes, and I'm sure you've been approached before where people will say, Hey, Jay, you know what? I would do real estate, but I just can't find the money. I mean, I just don't know where the money's coming from. Or they say, Jay, where do you find these investors? What are they, and they think they look like something completely different than what I'm like, and I will say sometimes I'll say some of the craziest things. Yeah, they're standing next to you at the grocery store. And That's they're right. Like, what do you mean? So I'm going to ask you, Jay, where do you find these investors? Because they clearly must live on some mystical mountain that only you have access to.
Yeah, I mean, they're ordinary folks. I mean, and sometimes the people that you think have got money, I mean, they just look like they do. And sometimes that they are from some of the most unlikely places. But anyway, a private lender, first of all, let me be clear on this, Jay. A private lender is simply an individual, a person that loans out money from their investment capital or their retirement funds. And that's a huge thing right there. I never heard of self-directed or using self-directed IRAs until, 9 years ago. Over half of our private lenders use their retirement funds and have transferred them over to a self-directed IRA and then loan the money out to us. But where do you find them? There's three primary categories of finding the private lenders. The first category are people that you've got some kind of connection with, some kind of, are they in your cell phone? Are they relatives? Are they, people that you know in the community? I mean, people that I call it the warm market, right? So that's one category out of three. A second category is I teach my students to go where the money is. Some people say, hey, Jay, all my people are broke. I don't know anybody in my warm market that's got money. Well, right. First of all, I don't believe that 100%. I know that there's people in some people's market that they may be intimidated to talk to, and we've got to fix for that. The second category are people that are not in your warm market yet, but can easily be in your warm market. So I teach people to go get new connections. Where do you get those new connections? Become involved in your community. Become involved in your church. Any kind of social network, such as the Rotary Club, Business Networking International, Chamber of Commerce, all that. Okay, so create a new warm market. The third category is existing private lenders, existing individuals that are already loaning money out. And again, I'm not talking about institutions or banks. I'm talking about individuals. I started the hard way. I started so many things. I hired my attorney's paralegal to search public records for, here in North Carolina, as you know, Jay, they're deeds of trust. Most people call them mortgages. But look in public record for individuals that have been loaning money out on real estate. And we'd only find like one in 90 days, And so I developed what I call my private lender data feed. That's a software that actually skims all the public records every month. And we come up with about 12,000 deals a month in public records. And then, we're able to contact those existing private lenders. But those are the three categories: your own warm market, expand your warm market, and existing private lenders.
Jay, if you keep talking, this is going to start to sound like work.
Well, and that's an interesting statement you make. Every once in a while, someone who doesn't know me very well will say, Jay, when do you plan on retiring? I said, what? Mm-hmm. Retire? Mm-hmm. What would I do? Yeah. I mean, what I do, I don't even view it as work. It's what I'm passionate about. It's just what we do, But, when it comes to private money and private lending, it's not like I wake up and say, okay, today I'm going to go search for private lenders. No, it's just part of what we do. When I started out, and I'd say I got over $2 million in less than 90 days. And sometimes people say, well, Jay, how in the world did you do that? You mentioned the word tools a few minutes ago, Jay. Mm-hmm. What I did is I recorded this 16-minute audio, and I titled it Stress-Free Investing. And this audio, the purpose of the audio was just to introduce this idea of private money, but it didn't talk about how much interest rate I'm going to pay or how their loan is protected or how they can get their money back in case of an emergency. I just brought those questions up in this audio. In fact, I've now recorded this audio for over 1,000 of my students. And so I took the audio and I just handed that thing out like it was candy. And I just let people listen to that. And if they were interested, they'd come back to me because I don't chase, I don't beg, I don't try to talk. Do you know, Jay, I have yet to ask anybody for money.
Right.
I have not asked anybody for money.
Right.
I just let them know my program. And if they've got investment capital or retirement funds that's not giving them a high rate of return safely and securely, they're going to want to hear the details. It's that simple. Just get the word out,
Yep.
Yep.
Over and over again. It's amazing how similar you and I are and have operated. So it just says that, look, it's out there, it's for you. It's just a matter of, hey, do you believe it, and will you do what's required in order to gain access to it? And it's interesting that your gift was that the bank cut you off. I say that our gift that we were given was the health challenges and the situation that we were put in, because there was no other way to make it happen. I was forced to find another way, and that other way involved learning to raise capital and then discovering the exact same secret about these self-directed retirement plans. Man, were they a lifesaver in so many different ways. Now, today, you're out there, you're functioning, you're doing what you do on a consistent basis. I do have a question. Why bother taking the time to share what you know?
Yeah. Well, my wife and I, we were both raised in the same church, not the same locale, but both raised in the Church of Christ. She's from Texas, I'm from North Carolina. So I grew up with this mentality of serving. And so what I discovered after getting involved in private money is that very, very few friends of mine that were real estate investors even knew about private money or knew what it was. And so what I discovered is that even though I'm able to impact a number of people's lives by being a real estate investor, but there's something much bigger than the money. I mean, we're only going to receive so much fulfillment or satisfaction just by making money. And so my bigger reason or my bigger purpose, and I know you will recall Zig Ziglar, Jay.
I will. Yeah.
And what a great motivator and speaker he was. I had the privilege of getting to meet or be around him twice before he passed on. But, one of his last recordings that he made talked about the last stage in life, not in your years, but as far as your growth and your maturity, is called significance. In other words, what kind of difference are we making in this life on this planet while we're here? And so I discovered I could impact a whole lot more lives, or even more lives, by not keeping what I do in real estate investing a secret and to myself. And so my level of significance and being able to make a difference in other people's lives has grown so much more by me being able to share, what I know. And, you mentioned a few minutes ago something that came to mind, and that is, learning new stuff. I'm just hungry. I always have been like this. I'm hungry for learning that new strategy or that new thing. And how can I make the business better? And of course, in my world, what can I bring to my students is brand new. Like, for instance, I was speaking at a conference last week in Asheville, North Carolina. I had 300 real estate investors there. And so I stayed for the entire conference myself, also as a student. And I learned so much. I mean, one thing I'm so excited about now, Jay, is I met this guy that has developed this system just 2 years ago on outbound calling to motivated sellers. Well, for 15 years, my primary way of reaching motivated sellers, as far as for sale by owners, is through direct mail. And of course, now I use a lot of Facebook ads and social media, but I still do direct mail. I've never done outbound cold calling to motivated sellers. And so now I'm launching that off. So anyway, I didn't mean to digress, but I just get excited about, because just like any other industry or business, it changes. It changes. And so I want to stay on the cutting edge of, what are the latest tools and strategies that we can use in our business.
Indeed. Agreed 100%. Now, for those that have listened this far and want to find out more about what you got going on, what's going to be the best way for them to follow up with you?
Sure. So, of course, they can reach me at my website, which is www.jayconner.com, JAYCONNER. I'm an ER, not an OR, .com. And I tell you what I want to do as well, Jay, is give all your listeners 2 free tickets to my live events, and they can learn all about what happens at my live events. We talk a lot about private money and finding deals, et cetera. And they can get those tickets at jayconner.com/CFD, of course, short for Cashflow Diary, jayconner.com/CFD.
Awesome. Thanks for that. I know that many will appreciate that. Now, as we wind down here, I've got a final question for you because I'm kind of curious to hear what your answer would be. There's a number of people who have listened, and they're at what I like to call the precipice of a decision. They've listened to us both. They're like, well, if Jay can do it, and if Jay can do it, then I can do it too. And they feel motivated because they're like, well, there's been only roadblocks that I've imagined in front of me. So let me figure out more. Now, like I know, when we reach these moments of decision, we often have a companion, and then that companion comes in the form of a voice, and that voice often reminds us of what we can't do, how it didn't work, and are you sure no one's going to give you a dime? What are you talking about, private money? That's not going to work for you. And for some people, they are related to that voice. So my question to you is as follows. Let's pretend for a moment that this time it's going to be different, Jay. They're going to follow through. They're actually going to do what you suggest, and they're going to do so in the next 24 to 48 hours. What would you suggest that they do?
As far as starting out brand new?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I mentioned it before. All right. So get the coach, get the mentor that has already been doing it for a while and knows the business. One of my very, very first suggestions beyond that is get involved with your local RIA, your Real Estate Investing Association. Most areas, no matter how small, have got either a Real Estate Investing Association or, something that's become very, very popular are meetups. And so a lot of meetup groups are around the area, and, hang around people at least once a month that are like-minded, that are working on the same thing. And here's another big suggestion that I say to folks, and that is get involved. Just don't attend the meeting, but get to know the leadership. Who's in charge of the education and bringing in speakers? Who's the president, and become a volunteer. Because the more you can volunteer at your local RIA and find out who the movers and shakers are and, be of service to that organization, then you're going to find yourself networking with people that really, really know the business and are successful. Once you get to know those people, offer to take them to lunch. All right. And, it's not really smart to eat lunch by yourself when you got so many people out there that could spend time with you and would love to spend time with you and share, what they know about real estate investing as well.
Indeed, 100%. I definitely want to thank you for, again, being who you are and doing it where you're doing it, for sure, and being willing to share your information and taking the time to share your knowledge, your wisdom, as well as your insight here with us today at the Cashflow Diary, sir.
Absolutely, Jay. Thank you so much for having me on the show. Wow, what a pleasure to be with you. And hey, I hadn't had a chance to say this to you yet. Man, you are doing what you should be doing because you have got the radio voice, man. You have got the voice.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, you know what time it is. It's time for you to move at the speed of instruction. What does that mean today? That means get over to jayconner.com. Why? Because like I know, that you heard what you needed to hear today, and now it's time for you to do something about it. Here's the thing. If you don't take action, when, and who is going to do it? If not you, then who? If not now, then when? The point here is very, very simple. The information is out there. It's waiting for you to make it yours so that you can then go out there and make a difference in your marketplace. Because As you've heard before, we all are striving for significance. And what better way to do it than providing clean, safe, affordable housing and making sure that you're at the middle of it. Ladies and gentlemen, it's been fun talking to you today. I look forward to talking to you soon. Until next time.